Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So today's video I'm going to be doing some more sketching on the iPad Pro and Procreate. And what I wanted to address in this one is, people were just asking certain things like I did a Batman piece and they were asking, like how you got your tapered lines and how you did your shading and things like that. So I'll cover a little bit of that as I just kind of sketch here and warm up on this thing. And then I'll also show you the brush settings real quick. So I modified this brush just a little bit. I can't even remember what modifications I made now, but you could look at probably the existing technical, no, because I didn't save a copy, but I just made it where it felt a little bit more natural. The other thing is I adjusted some things in the pressure curve, which I want to say is somewhere over here, edit pressure curve. So just little things like that. You move. I'm not gonna move it because my luck I'll mess it up. But you move that around. It's like a levels curve or a Bezier handle, and just kind of get that to where essentially you're looking for at lightest pressure and at darkest pressure. Whatever that feeling is for you. Obviously can't really help you much with that. You have to really play around with it and get that feeling going. So essentially, like I like to do, I'll just warm up on some head and bust type stuff real quick just to get a comfort level going before I show you something. So what I was thinking in this one, I'll show you how I would just taper some lines. Now, the thing is with this particular setup is that it's just very great out of the box. Like I've mentioned before, it works really well. It's not something where there's an extreme learning curve. Like when you use the Intuos tablets, you are going to have a bit of a learning curve, and that it just kind of comes with the territory. There, in some ways, there's things that are just far superior with the Intuos tablets. Like I've mentioned before, things like posture and just certain aspects of it are really good. And then there's certain things with these types of tablets, direct to surface, we'll call them, that are just far superior in my opinion. And one of the things that are far superior in this particular instance is a comfort level of getting the exact line you're looking for. So if you're very much a person that has a good direction in the way that you want to see your lines on your piece, then it probably makes a bit more sense to do this type of method. If you're somebody that tends to sketch more and sculpt your work in a sense, then the Intuos tablets would probably be even a bit more superior. Like I actually prefer doing ZBrush work with the Intuos tablet and a bigger screen. So that's the other thing that you get with running Intuos tablets is you can basically plug it into your if you got a big screen at home or whatever, you can plug into that, and it's really cool. Really cool experience, anyways. I've yet to do it on a large projector on the wall. That's the next step. Oh man! And then after that, virtual reality. Yeah, people are doing that now. I can only imagine. Like, wouldn't that be sweet? Like you're drawing something or painting, and you can bring somebody into that realm or whatever. Oh man, it's gonna get sick in the next few years or however long. Hopefully, I'll get to see it. All right. So, anyways, so like basically, if we take, I'm just scribbling here, or just sketching. So some days I'm a little bit more, sketching things out, and other days I've got a better feel for what I want to see, and I just kind of go to, the overall shapes a little bit quicker. Can't say what that is, if I got enough sleep that night or if made my coffee a little stronger the next day. I don't know, but it's just the way it is. But the fundamentals of what you draw and what you learn to draw will carry you through the bad days. That's my philosophy, anyways. Take it as you will. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say that this is a good enough warm up. I don't know who I'm doing here or what or why. But I want to get to something that I can shade for you so that we can talk about tapering lines. Oh, and one other quick thing I wanted to address is that somebody asked me, "How are you recording this on one of the recent posts?" And I try to answer back as many things as I can, but keep in mind it does get a little bit tricky with a lot of comments and things. So forgive me if I miss your post or your comment. It's not intentional, and I can only imagine how tough that's going to get with the current growth. The channel's actually been growing really well lately, and I'm excited about that. And then I'm also fearful of that because, there's going to be a lot of comments that just get lost in the shuffle, unfortunately. So essentially, what I would say as far as recording, to try to explain it as simply as I can, is that basically I use the wire that plugs into the um, charger, the adapter. It's a USB to a lightning, basically, I think is what it's referred to as. So I plug that into the side of my computer in a USB. The faster the USB, probably the better. And then that goes into the side of the iPad Pro. And then from there, I use QuickTime. So right now I have QuickTime up on my Mac. Now, I don't know how you do this with the PC. So, and I've mentioned this before, but I'm just going to reiterate it. You'll have to find either a PC version if they make that for QuickTime, which I imagine they would, but I don't know. So you'll have to do your due diligence there because I can't help you with that. But it's something to that extent where you would just, I'm going to get rid of this funky arm because it just looks too typical. Keep in mind you can select with this, then 3 swipes down on the screen and just hit cut. I found that to be a quicker way to erase, just so you know. So at any rate, you would basically QuickTime it, and then you go to QuickTime and you go to File New, or New Movie Recording, I should say, and you just basically set up inside of that setting when you got a new movie recording. You set up to record using your mic if you have a mic, or you can just use the speakers on your recorder on your laptop or whatever. I use a Blue Yeti mic, so I go to that setting for my audio, and then I tell it to do maximum file size for the recording, and this is what I get. So it's as simple as that. I don't know. I know there's these other adapters and other things. But that's it. And now if you're using Procreate, you can just simply, every time I'm drawing, it's recording each pressure stroke that I put down on the device here. And providing there's no issues, every now and then it'll kind of hiccup and lose something. But it's very rare. It's pretty solid. And it will just make a video for me at the end. And if you've watched the channel, you probably noticed I've uploaded a couple of those. They don't do so well. I think people get mad because I'm not explaining the process. And I don't know because they'll just hit dislike and they won't tell me what they dislike. And that's something else I'm going to address real quick here. Please just write in a comment. I would even almost prefer a rude comment other than just a dislike. Even if it's like, and I know some people are just going, oh, this isn't what I wanted. They hit dislike and they run away. So they're never going to stop to say, hey, you could have did this better, this, and this. But if you're one of my subscribers, fans, whatever you want to call yourself, if you dislike something, let me know so I can improve upon it. So I'll post something like that. I'm thinking, oh, somebody will enjoy this, and all of a sudden I get a couple dislikes, and I'm like ticked off for the rest of the day. I know, I shouldn't let it get to me. But it does, because I put a lot of work on this stuff, so I get bothered by it. All right, so anyways, enough of my problems. God, I'm just doing these really boring, static hand-arm poses right now. All right, so let's get to the shading because this is ticking me off. I can't get and just so you know, probably what's going on here is you always got to put this bit of a tilt to the fist, and I got to really practice. This is something I've got to isolate in my drawing. So every time I come to an area and it's like I can't get that right for some reason, it looks weird, it looks wrong. That means I've got to study that. So that'll be something I study in the next week or so and isolate just this area and draw like 10 or 20 of them. I've been doing that with eyes, mouths, poses, expressions, and it's something you just got to do. So it's good when you see those flaws in your work and then you just get to it and start, working on it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to some shading here. So I know this is kind of a long-winded roundabout to what I was going to talk about here, but I just want to, again, try to address a few things in each video so that hopefully people are getting, what they want out of it. It won't be so specific, of course, but all right. So as far as shading on this, and somebody was asking, like, how do you taper your lines? So all I do really is, I first designate where I perceive the light source of the shadow to be. And what I start thinking about at this stage is what type of material is this? Now, if it's just a character, which, I don't really draw a whole lot of guys just walking around with their shirts off. Anyways, I try not to. Unless it's in the script or something, but it's basically always a suit, right? So essentially, I would start thinking about reflectivity, specularity of the suit, what type of material is this, and it's funny that you would have that many things go through your mind as you're trying to draw these superheroes, but that's essentially what you have to do. So you gotta pretty much, forgive me, I lost my screen here, trying to get it back. This is the only other drawback when you're projecting. You gotta kind of keep two screens going on different systems. So, and just so you know, that's exactly what's occurring here. I'm basically projecting onto my Mac computer and screen grabbing in a sense, but really it's just pulling right from the device. I can just see it on the other screen. So yeah, so you think about all these things that go into your suit design or whatever, the material, the character. And in a sense, you're going to shade differently based upon that. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of, scribble in some shadow. So I'll usually block in the first bit of shadow. Now, you can do things like this where you say, no, this is all going to be in the shadow. And if this was just a character's skin, then this is predominantly how I would shade it. I would shade it more flat. So shadows would connect together more. There'd be a lot larger shape of shadows like this or something. But what I tend to do, if I'm thinking about an object being specular, I tend to think more about bounce light and things like that. So I'll do something like this. And I can't tell you that this is accurate. This is more style choices in my opinion, but it's the way that I do it. So I'll think, okay, this suit's, pretty shiny. I want to show the roundedness of it. I want to show that there's a bit, this side's more in shadow down there, but it's not completely blacked out. And it helps me to kind of round out the overall forms. So it helps me to say, hey, this character is, pretty buff guy, and he's rounded. He's got, some dimension and shape to his chest. He doesn't just have this flat pectoral muscle. So this is kind of how I illustrate that. And again, I don't know that this is the right way, if there is a right way, but that's kind of my thought process as I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to shade this character and make them not look so flat. And the other thing that to try really is just to try like different ways of shading the same area. And digital is great for that. So you can just create a new layer and you can go, maybe these lines look better horizontally, and experimenting that. So don't just see somebody do their lines, rotated around the shape, which is a good way, because this is the other thing I wanted to address. If you turn these lines just ever so slightly as you're doing it, it makes it look a lot more rounded. And one of the artists' work that I studied, and I saw that David Finch did a demonstration. I can't remember which one it was now, unfortunately, but look up his work. He does amazing shading, and he was talking about that. Like, if you just make sure these lines round with the form, you're going to get a lot more depth out of it. You're going to get that curvature illustrated into your drawing. So try that. But again, don't think that there's only one way to skin a cat, and which is a gross term, obviously, but I love cats. But if you take and shade, like this, and then you could say, okay, well, I want the lines to do, that rounded. Well, they're not looking rounded right there, but I'm going to go back. You could go, well, I want them to round downward around that muscle group or whatever. Or you could try horizontal, you could try angular, you could try cross hatching. You just have to really try different things, but remember that you can just simply go, I'm going to experiment, so I'm going to add a layer. And let's try some horizontal lines. Let's try to break them up as they come down. This is one of the ways that I do it anyways. And I'll taper them, and then I'll just have them segment, or break off or thin out, or whatever you want to say, as I go to the sides. So I'm trying to perceive it that shadow is dissipating right through there. So it almost creates a light source, even though it's kind of a lack of light, or I guess it's a light source, but a lack of shading right there. And then we'll do the shoulder. Shoulders are always a tricky one for people, myself included. And really what happens here is you got to really get that nice foundational sketch line in there. to know, to know where you're going. Like a big part of a good drawing is getting the base foundation just right, so that you're not guessing as you go to the next part of the drawing. You're not going, oh God, I don't know what I want to do here, and you're kind of winging it. Sometimes you get lucky and come out with something really cool, and other times you're just going to regret not thinking through the process a bit more. So get some good foundational lines in there. And when I say stuff like that, one of the things I recommend studying, let me merge these down. The other thing is I like to merge stuff down after I get past it, so I don't end up with a ton of layers, especially on a sketch. You got a lot of options to edit the sketch anyways. So I had a new layer there. But one of the things I always recommend studying for intentional line making or line clarity is Disney artwork and Disney artists. Their stuff is so well done with a minimal amount of lines that you can learn a lot about that process and ultimately improve your art dramatically by just by really studying what they're doing. Okay, so, and I'm double tapping the screen, so it's a 2-finger tap to undo. And a nice thing about Procreate is that it gives you, I can't remember, hundreds of undos. So it's a really great program for making mistakes in, essentially. So what I want to first do is kind of perceive the shape of the shoulder. And really, I don't want it to be completely round like this. It's going to look pretty boring. The shoulder, this isn't the best foundational, but we'll go with it for now, I guess. We'll go more like, kind of like this. I don't know if I'm doing this right, but it segments a bit. So the shadows bend, in that dimension or whatever that it has. So we have to think about that a little bit. And then we have to perceive how much we want this larger shoulder mass to be in shadow. So is it just shaded a little bit on the bottom, say 25-30%, or is it half in shadow, which I think would be a lot compared to the chest. So we'll say that lower amount, that 25-30%, something like that. And the other thing I try to do with my shadows is just put a little bit more organic bends. So instead of rounding, it's real easy to want to just throw a rounded shape on the bottom of each of these. So I try to perceive a little bit more, again, like almost organic line work or something, just something that's got a bit more shift to it. And you'll notice that when you study photos that, muscles have all kinds of crazy shapes to them. They're not totally rounded or anything like that. And that's what I think my problem is. Let me go back to this, merge it down. So I'm just tapping that layer, hitting merge down, and I want to change that bottom shape. I'm almost tempted to start looking in the mirror, as I often do. I don't always look in the mirror. I'm not like, really vain or nothing. That's a lie. I'm actually pretty vain. All right, so right there, just, I'm trying to get like this bit of shape right here, and maybe I curl this up just a little. I don't want it too much. I don't want to draw this segmented line like this, is what I'm trying to avoid doing. And then a bit more thicker shadow at the base. But I almost don't want this, any connection right here, even though I'm going to shade it, so I don't know how I'm going to get around that, but just trying to figure it out here. And let's see, the trap usually comes down like this, connects to the shoulder, and comes back out like this. And that's another thing I do whenever I'm working on this stuff, is I'll draw off to the side and try to remember stuff, And it doesn't always come right to you and back to you every day. Sometimes you just have to start pulling from reference or look at your favorite artists and get inspired or whatever. There's just lots of ways to handle that. But some days you're just, it's just all pouring out and there's no problems there. And other days you gotta fight it a little bit more. And again, I think that's where the fundamentals really come in. So okay, let's just try to, again, try to get a bit of shape in here. Try to avoid the overly rounded look, but something like this. I probably just need to go study some shadows. And then I can try to perceive a bit of that bounce light. So So maybe shade like this. And maybe put a bit of shadow on the bottom of it. Something like this. And as you can probably tell, I'm doing a little bit of guessing here. And I'll start tapering off these lines. And I don't know if you can tell, I would think you'd be able to tell, but I'm basically pulling that line multiple times until I get a certain thickness, and then I pull a thin line. And that's what I mean by tapering or feathering. So every time you hear me say something like that, that's essentially what I'm referring to. Okay, so same thing here. I could just go kind of these thick to thin taper lines. And the other thing that you want to vary up when you do this is you want to try different various levels of how long the tapers are, how thick they start to how thin they end, if that makes sense. You just want to vary it up in all different forms and fashions. Another good technique is just to draw a bunch of spheres on your page and then practice tapering a variety of cross-hatching and lines around them, and just seeing how much you can try to round the form. And then the other thing is how many various effects you can get. So how many different style or materials can you convey with the way that you're drawing the stuff. So if I was to get, again, if I'm thinking this is more of a specular type suit, I might get over here and start doing some kind of bounce light on the edge. This is something that I typically do like with characters like, more when I'm drawing Silver Surfer, my own character Blackstone, and things like that. See how I just plugged my character kind of seamlessly? I just kind of threw that in there. You like that? Hope you do. Alright, so a little glare right there. And that's how I just would work. That's not really perfect or anything like that or close to it, but that's how I just kind of get in there and show some different materials, or I start thinking about different materials. Another one I like to do, it's kind of cheesy, but I always do it. I think I got this more from the 90s comics thing that I love so much, is just that little glare on the front of the sternum here. And it's actually, I got it off a bit. But what it does, it just makes it look like the chest is like really bowed out. I always thought that was really cool in comics. So a little bit of cross hatching down here. And then the other thing that I do is I'll just sit there and go, say I'm not even working on the muscles over here anymore. And I guess I could do one off the back of here. I'll just do it over here. So what I mean by practicing the various line work is, just, trying to make some long tapered lines like this. And also keep in mind to pay attention to the gap, not just the line itself. So that's how you get all these different effects. Obviously, they're all just lines, but it's the way that you curve them. So you want to do some that are like this. It's the way that you break them up at the end. So say you've got the same type of line here, but you do these nice little breaks here and there. So it gives this kind of grittiness to the lines a bit. So you do this intentional kind of broke up effect or inconsistency or whatever. So that's, these are all different feelings to the line essentially. You've obviously got cross hatching, and then let me try somewhere really get them tight together. So this is good for like when you're trying to convey more shadow to an area, try to really squeeze them in a bit tighter. And then you might say, okay, as it's coming up around this form, it's starting to get more into light. So you just start spacing these out. And then essentially dissipating them, or whatever word you want to use there. And then, maybe do some cross hatching the same way. And a lot of times when I cross hatch, I try to make the one set of lines a bit thicker, more prominent than the other. I don't know why. It's just again, it's a style choice. So break those away a bit like that. What else? And this is all just, good practice type stuff. Another one is where you just do kind of these little pointed lines on the edge of something. So these are nice for just almost like you're just giving this tiny little edge of shading to a part, So you've got this larger bulk of shadow, but here this is just like that little roundedness of shading that you get on an object. So it's not quite in shadow, it's a rounded part of the form. So it's good to kind of add those here and there to make something not look flat, but you're not necessarily adding a bunch of shading to that area. And I think another good thing to keep in mind is that you don't want large shadows everywhere. That's how you convey the bigger forms. So in some areas like the trap here, maybe I just put this tiny little shadow off to the edge, and that just shows it's not completely flat, but it's definitely not as big or as visible as the shoulder and the chest from this angle. So little things like that kind of go a long ways too. So like basically subtleties. And the more you practice art, the more the subtleties just start to make sense and kind of work their way into your art style anyways. Then obviously you've got, stippling. And you see I pretty much feather every line. It's just kind of the way that I draw. I don't know that, I don't think I can get the kind of effect I'm after just with a quick pull. So I'll try that real quick so I don't look like I'm doing just the same thing over and over again. So this is like me trying to do a quick stippling, a quick pull. And maybe I need to set my brushes up differently, but you see I'm not getting much line variation there. Let me zoom in and show you. And I probably should have added a little bit more resolution to this canvas size. That's another thing. So if your lines are coming out really poorly, also play with the resolution on the canvas to make sure that that's not affecting your line work. So yeah, I feel like I always have to feather the line to get the type of line I'm looking for. So, try that as well. So essentially I'm just kind of scribbling and then a quick pull and vary that up. And let me see if there's anything else I can kind of think of to explain here with this. I think that's about it. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's essentially you're conveying depth by defining your primary shape, your basic shape. You want to define your light source. And keep in mind too that this particular device does really well with like just a scribble type shading, to where you can just press lightly and kind of scribble over the same area. For comics, I typically do, a lot more of the feathering like I showed you, but this device does do pretty well with almost like a charcoal shading kind of effect as well. So they just really did really well with this device and this program. I'm almost like just only wanting to sketch in this program now, which is kind of silly, but okay. So now, so if I was to define the light source again, I would say what percentage of shadow is this in. So I always think about percentages when I'm shading my objects. So maybe I say this is about 40% of the object in shadow or something like that. How does it round out? Where's the light source? So when you round the line this way, which it basically just made it look like it's flat right there, I would say that the light's more on this side, but up here, if that makes sense to you. Is where if I round it like this, then the light is actually behind the object over this way, something. Okay, so we'll say it's right there. Again, you just start shading it in, or you can do the little X's if you think you're fancy. And like that, you could think about bounce light, whether or not this material is that specular. Almost anything has a bit of bounce light to it, but there's sometimes you want to omit bounce light for absolute dark scenes. You could even say that this isn't entirely in shadow, and you could crosshatch more than fill that all in. So there's just lots of options, and again, subtleties. We can throw a horizon line back here. That's always a good way to, again, introduce another series of light source, cross-hatching, or whatever you want to do. So with cross-hatching, the larger the gaps, the less prominent the shading, obviously. And then past that, it's like, okay, where's my maybe stronger light source or glare or something like that. You could, do something like this if you wanted. And then you could start doing some feathered lines and convey your transitional shadows, your gradients. Or you could use zipatones or whatever you're into, like half tones or whatever. I don't think they're called zipatones anymore. It's probably showing my age, but and then just cross hatch your way out of it till you're content with your work. And that is that. Essentially, that's all there is to it. I mean, there's, again, lots of variation to that, but that's essentially how it goes. So hopefully that's answered the questions that I was getting on this, and how I do my shading and how I do my feathering and cross hatching and things like that. And it's really just working your way through the piece and making decisions as you go. That part you just have to do for yourself, log lots of hours like anything else, and you'll start to get it. So hopefully this video has been beneficial for you and taught you a thing or two. If it has, be sure to like and subscribe and share the video, and let me know what you'd like to see for future episodes. Remember that you can follow me on Twitch for live streams on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and also that you can support my work on both Gumroad and Patreon, and it helps me to keep focusing on what I'm doing here and keep sharing content with you guys. So thanks very much for your time. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.